for Pisces, and for those who have ever wondered whether a moment of silence truly means the end. You look at the distance between two people and try to explain it in a way that makes your heart feel lighter. No messages, no replies, no familiar sign to confirm what is really happening. Time moves on and everything seems to settle on the surface. Yet deep inside, something still hasn't fully closed, not clearly defined, not needing a name, just a quiet feeling, like water still flowing beneath a calm surface. Pisces are often spoken of as people who live deeply in their emotions, but very few truly understand how they hold a connection, not through words, not through obvious gestures, but through a depth that isn't easy to see from the outside. And if you ever thought they would let go easily, this story may offer a different perspective. It begins with what you can see, and with what still remains, just beyond the surface. You see someone who no longer shows up the way they used to. Messages come to a stop. Questions go unanswered, and the distance grows in a way that's hard to put into words. In moments like these, the mind often reaches for a familiar conclusion, that everything has faded, that the care is no longer there, that the other person has moved on without carrying anything from the past with them. That way of thinking makes it easier to breathe. It feels neat, it feels clear, and it allows us to close a door without standing in front of it for too long. But Pisces do not live by neat conclusions. Their inner world doesn't follow the fast logic of the outside world. Everything within them moves more slowly, more deeply, and often beyond what others can see. What you notice is only the surface. What's truly happening lies underneath. Pisces don't leave in ways that are easy to recognize. They don't place a final period through a declaration. They don't shut down emotion with obvious coldness. When a connection reaches a deep layer within them, it doesn't disappear simply because silence appears. For Pisces, silence is often a phase of settling inward, a moment to feel more clearly, not to avoid, not to test anyone, but a way of facing what goes beyond words. Many people see absence and call it the end. Pisces look inward and quietly ask, has this truly come to a close? They carry the ability to hold emotion for a long time. And it's not because they cling, but because they understand that a real connection isn't measured by how often people speak. It's measured by the imprint it leaves on the heart. You may no longer appear in their daily life, but that doesn't mean you've disappeared from their emotional world. What once touched a Pisces heart is often kept in a very deep place, where time doesn't easily fade it away. This is why many misunderstand Pisces when looking from the outside. They assume silence means finality. They believe distance is a form of rejection, but Pisces rarely cut things off in such simple ways. Most of what happens within them doesn't need an audience. They move through emotion as a private journey, not displayed, not seeking validation, just needing to remain honest with themselves. And if you're standing on the other side of that silence, you're feeling uncertain, that confusion is completely natural, because as humans, we want to know where we stand in someone else's story. This part isn't meant to convince you to believe anything. It simply opens another possibility for reflection, that what you're seeing may not be the entire picture, that behind a Pisces silence, there are still movements without words. This is where the story begins, at the surface, and in the deeper layers, the ones the eye cannot reach. The inner world of Pisces doesn't move at the speed of the quick reactions. They don't process emotion through immediate answers. They turn inward first, before allowing anything to move outward. For Pisces, emotion isn't something meant to be revealed right away as proof. It's a current, with depth, with layers, and it needs time to reveal its true shape. When something touches them, a sentence, a look, a subtle shift in energy, the first response rarely appears on their face. It happens elsewhere, in a very deep place, one they reserve only for themselves. Pisces often step back, not to create distance, but to listen to what's moving inside. They observe their own emotions first. They sense where those feelings are coming from, and where they might be leading them. In that space of stepping back, many questions arise, not questions meant for others, but questions meant for the self. Is this feeling coming from genuine connection, or from the fear of losing something? Is what I'm sensing rooted in the present, or is it an echo of something from the past that never fully closed? And if I keep moving forward, Am I crossing my own emotional boundaries? These questions are rarely spoken out loud. Pisces don't have the habit of emptying every thought into the open. They believe not everyone needs to know these subtle inner movements, and not everyone would truly understand them by listening alone. Instead, they allow emotion to organize itself, to settle, to reveal what remains after the initial waves have passed. This is why Pisces are often misunderstood as hard to read, because the most important part of them isn't found in visible action. It lives in quiet processes, where they meet themselves with honesty. Pisces can hold emotion longer than most people realize, not because they're used to pain, but because they believe feelings deserve to complete their own journey rather than being cut short by rushed reactions. They understand that without time spent listening inward, and any decision expressed outward can lose its truth. And in that inner world, silence isn't emptiness. It's a working space of the soul, a place where Pisces speak with themselves, layer by layer. From the outside, it's easy to think nothing is happening, but in reality, this is when the most movement is taking place. It simply doesn't require an audience. This part of the story isn't meant to define who Pisces are. It only invites you to consider another possibility, that beneath what goes unsaid, there is still an ocean shifting in its own way. And when that becomes clear, you may begin to see a Pisces step back through a different lens, less quick to conclude, more open to what doesn't reveal itself right away. In everyday life, silence is often understood in a very simple way. Not speaking anymore means someone has left. No response means things are closed. A gap appears, and the story is assumed to be over. That way of thinking makes everything easier to categorize: staying or leaving, present or gone, yes or no. But for Pisces, silence doesn't live on such clear lines. Their silence is not an act of cutting off. It's more like a space they choose to hold, so emotion isn't distorted by reactions that come too quickly. A space that allows them to set everything down, to look again, and to ask what is truly worth carrying forward. Pisces understand that not every feeling needs to be brought into the light right away. Some emotions need to remain as they are, not named yet, not defined yet, not pushed into becoming a decision. Within that silence, they don't disappear. They remain present in their own way, at the level of feeling, in memory, in small details that are easy for others to miss. You may no longer hear their voice, but that doesn't mean they've stopped listening. In fact, it's often during their quietest moments that Pisces sense the energy of a connection most clearly. They pay attention to what remains after everything settles. When conversation becomes less frequent, does the feeling still stand on its own? Does the other person's presence still create a genuine resonance? Or is it simply an old habit that hasn't yet loosened its grip? This isn't a test meant for anyone else. It's how Pisces stay honest with themselves. They believe a meaningful connection doesn't need to be held together by constant effort. If it's real, it will continue to exist, even without daily words to sustain it. And if it slowly fades in silence, that perhaps its foundation was more fragile than we once believed. Pisces don't use silence to apply pressure. They don't use it to manipulate someone else's emotions. For them, silence is a safe space where no one has to perform. In that space, they allow themselves not to be strong, not to be clear, not to answer the question, what comes next, right away. Many people leave because they can't tolerate that kind of openness. They need quick reassurance. They need a definite answer to feel at ease. Pisces are different. They're willing to live with the question a little longer, because they understand that what truly matters rarely reveals itself in haste. If you've ever stood in front of a Pisces silence and felt confused, that feeling is completely natural. As humans, we want certainty about where we stand in someone else's story. But sometimes, the absence of an immediate answer creates space to look more deeply, not into them, but into your own emotions. Silence can show you what you're truly waiting for, what you're afraid of losing, and whether you're holding on because of genuine care or because of the fear of being left behind. This part doesn't claim that silence carries only one meaning. It simply opens a possibility that for Pisces, silence can be a way of protecting what still matters from decisions that aren't ready yet. And if they're still there in a way that isn't easy to notice, then perhaps that connection is still breathing. It's simply being held in a very deep place, where not many words are needed to exist. Pisces don't open the door to their emotional world for many people, not because they are closed off, but because they understand the value of what exists behind that door. Each time they open their heart, they do so with a very personal kind of care, not a cold, logical calculation, but a quiet sensing of whether the other person is truly safe within their inner world. When Pisces allow someone to step inside, it isn't an emotional experiment, not to see where things might go, not to fill a temporary void. They don't connect simply because they feel empty. They connect when they sense a deep resonance, something that moves beyond surface attraction or words that sound good in the moment. Pisces love through memory, but not grand, dramatic memories. They love through the smallest pieces of everyday life. The way someone listens without interrupting, a look held just long enough for them to feel truly seen. An ordinary moment that leaves a longer echo than expected. Those details don't fade quickly. They're stored deep, becoming part of Pisces' emotional landscape. And once something reaches that depth, it isn't easily replaced. Pisces don't categorize relationships with labels. They don't rush to name things. What matters more to them is how it feels to think about that person. Does it feel lighter? Does it feel more real? Does it make them want to slow down just to feel more clearly? So when a connection has existed at that level, letting go doesn't happen as a clean decision. It feels more like a long process, one that moves through layers of emotion that have already been built. Pisces don't erase what once carried meaning, not because they cling, but because they respect feelings that were once real. They believe anything that touched their heart deserves a gentle closing, not rushed denial, not pretending it never existed. In the world of Pisces, every connection leaves a trace. Some marks soften with time, others remain still for a very long while, waiting for the slightest touch to surface again. This is why Pisces are often misunderstood as living in the past. But in truth, they simply don't see emotion as something that can be switched on and off at will. They allow feeling to exist until it naturally finds its own place to rest. If you were ever part of that world, it means you once touched something very real. And no matter how the story unfolded afterward, that imprint isn't erased by distance or by silence alone. This part doesn't suggest that every connection lasts forever. It simply reminds us that for Pisces, what is given with sincerity is rarely treated as insignificant. And when you understand that, you begin to see the way they love, the way they hold on, and the way they step away with a different kind of respect. Because for Pisces, connection has never been a game. It's part of a life journey walked through with an open heart and kept with a very deep sense of care. From the outside, a Pisces pulling back is often misunderstood. Many assume it comes from fear of losing someone, fear of facing emotion, fear of continuing. But when you look more closely, what Pisces are protecting isn't on the other side. It lives within them. Pisces don't lack the ability to bond. What they struggle with is disconnecting from their own emotions. When they love, they give a great deal. Not in a showy way, but through deep presence. Through constant empathy. Through holding another person's feelings inside their own inner space. And that is precisely why they must learn to step back. Not because the feeling has faded, but because they come to a crucial realization. If they keep moving forward the same way, they begin to lose their sense of self. Pisces often recognize this later than others, because they're used to giving before asking what they need. Used to listening, used to adjusting, used to staying a little longer, so no one feels left behind. Until one day, exhaustion appears quietly. No explosion, no blame. Just the sense that they're no longer standing steadily inside their own emotional world. That's when Pisces step back. This step back isn't a punishment. It isn't a strategy either. It's an act of self-protection, born from a very real need. The need to return to themselves before continuing to hold someone else. Pisces begin to ask different questions. Am I giving out of love or out of fear of disappointing someone? Am I staying because this connection nourishes me or because I haven't yet learned how to let go with kindness? These questions aren't comfortable. They force Pisces to face the most fragile parts of themselves. And to do that, they need distance, not to become farther apart, but to see more clearly. During this phase, Pisces learn how to set emotional boundaries, not through firm declarations, but by listening to their own limits. They realize that love doesn't mean being endlessly self-sacrificing, care doesn't mean forgetting personal needs, and staying doesn't mean trading inner peace for connection. Stepping back allows Pisces to breathe again, to recognize which feelings belong to them, which belong to someone else, and which parts they can carry forward without harming themselves. Many connections don't survive this stage, not because Pisces don't love deeply enough, but because not every relationship is ready to exist once Pisces begin to love themselves more clearly. This part of the story isn't meant to justify withdrawal. It simply offers another way of seeing that when Pisces step back, they aren't abandoning anyone. They're trying to keep their heart intact, and only when that happens can continuing or stopping be truly honest, not driven by fear, not shaped by pressure, but guided by the balance Pisces learn after returning to themselves. After everything they've already felt, what Pisces are searching for isn't pursuit. They don't need to feel chased. They don't need grand gestures to prove that something exists. What they want to know is actually quite simple, but not everyone notices it. Pisces want to know whether someone is perceptive enough to sense their presence even when they aren't saying anything. Whether someone can feel their energy in moments without words after all surface expressions have settled. They don't ask these questions to test anyone. They ask because they need to understand where they stand within a connection. Not in promises, not in plans, but in the honest feeling of each moment. Pisces pay attention to very small things. The way someone listens without stepping in. The way someone responds when there is no clear answer. The way someone faces an empty space without rushing to fill it with assumptions. From these details, they slowly come to understand something important. Whether this connection holds enough space for both people to be themselves. Pisces don't need anyone to explain everything. They only need the sense that their silence isn't misunderstood right away. That they're allowed to exist in a state where they're not yet ready to say everything out loud. This isn't easy. Most people are used to labeling things quickly. Silence gets linked to distance. Stepping back gets linked to coldness. Slowing down gets linked to a lack of care. Pisces don't live well inside those labels. They need a depth of understanding that doesn't rush to assign meaning to every outward sign, a patience that allows feeling to unfold at its own pace, and a presence strong enough not to waver, simply because words are missing. Pisces want to know whether you can be there without trying to control, be there without pushing, be there without requiring clarity before they've even understood what they're feeling themselves. Only in a connection like that do they dare to open another door, not through impulsive action, but through trust that builds over time. Pisces are highly sensitive to the energy of sincerity. They can tell when someone truly wants to understand them, not just keep them close. And when they feel that, they soften, they open, they become willing to share deeper layers they once kept carefully guarded. On the other hand, if they feel constantly required to explain, to respond in a fixed pattern, to behave according to someone else's expectations, they begin to close, not to punish, but to keep themselves safe. This part of the story isn't saying everyone needs to understand Pisces in the same way. It simply offers something to reflect on, that some people don't need to be pursued, they need to be seen with more subtlety. And for Pisces, understanding doesn't come from having every answer. It comes from accepting that some spaces don't need to be filled yet, some moments don't need to be named, and some feelings don't need to be pushed faster than the heart can carry. If you've ever wondered what makes Pisces stay, the answer may not lie in doing more. It may lie in how you're present when there's nothing left to prove. When you look back on the path you've traveled, what tends to remain isn't the gestures meant to impress, not the promises spoken loudly, not the efforts put on display for others to see. Some connections exist in a quieter way. They don't need to be confirmed through grand actions. They're felt through a very subtle vibration, through what lingers after everything else has settled. Pisces offer us a lesson like this, that the value of a connection isn't always found in what happens on the surface. Sometimes it lives in how you feel inside when you think of someone, lighter or heavier, clearer or more tangled, more at ease or more closed. This lesson isn't only for Pisces, it's for anyone who has stood in an empty space and wondered how they should understand it. We're often taught to act in order to hold on to what matters, to do more, to say more, to prove more. But Pisces suggests a different perspective, that at times, doing nothing more allows us to recognize what is truly there. When rushed reactions fall away, you begin to notice which feelings remain after expectation has quieted, which feelings exist only out of habit, and which ones run deep enough not to be swept away by the absence of interaction. This is when the heart has room to answer for itself, not pushed, not driven by the fear of having to decide right away. Pisces remind us that not every silence carries the same meaning. Some silences appear because two people are drifting apart. Others appear so each person can see their own path more clearly. Being able to tell the difference isn't easy. It requires honesty with your own emotions and the courage to stay with questions that don't yet have clear answers. In moments like these, you may discover what you're truly searching for: immediate comfort or a connection with lasting depth, quick certainty, awe, or a sense of rightness that comes from within. Pisces don't offer formulas. They don't say silence is always good or always meaningful. They simply live in a way that respects their emotional rhythm, and through that, they invite others to do the same. This is where the deeper lesson rests. You're allowed to pause and listen, allowed not to understand everything right away, allowed to give emotion the time it needs to reveal its true shape. Our culture often rewards speed, but inner life requires depth. Pisces represent that part of life, where value isn't found in moving faster, but in touching what's true. If you're in a season filled with open spaces, it may be an invitation to return to yourself, to look again at what you truly need, and what you may be holding on to only because you're afraid of losing it. This lesson doesn't ask you to change how you live. It simply offers another option, that you can meet silence with full presence instead of rushing to fill it with conclusions. And when the heart is allowed to breathe in its own rhythm, what still matters will find its way to stay. No proof required, no display needed, just real enough to be felt. If you think Pisces let go easily, you may only be looking at the surface of the story. What happens on the outside often appears clean and simple. A distance shows up, the rhythm of communication shifts, a feeling that everything is past. But Pisces don't live fully on that outer layer. Their world exists deeper, where emotions don't follow clear shapes, and time doesn't always move in a straight line. When they still feel something real, leaving is never a light step. It's an inner journey, one where they carry many things left unspoken. Pisces carry the fragments of memories that once touched them, not to live inside them forever, but because they understand that what was once real deserves to be held with respect. They don't deny the past in order to move forward. They allow it to settle into its proper place, as part of the journey that helped shape who they are today. This is why Pisces are often misunderstood as unable to let go. In truth, they're simply not used to erasing emotion as if it never existed. They believe that acknowledging what once was is a form of honesty with themselves. And within that honesty, there is a deeply human value. That strength doesn't come from rejecting emotion. It can come from understanding it and accepting it. This story isn't saying that Pisces hold on to every connection. Not everything stays. Not every feeling continues. But when they do walk away, it's usually after they've moved through the full range of feelings that needed to be felt. After they've listened to themselves. After emotion has been given space to fully live within its own boundaries. And if you were ever part of that emotional world, it doesn't disappear simply because distance appears. It becomes a marker, a point of contact, a memory placed back quietly, yet carrying its own weight. The final message isn't meant to ask you to hold on to anything, nor is it asking you to wait for someone to return. It simply invites you to view connection with a gentler lens, that not every silence needs an explanation, not every distance carries the same meaning, and not everyone leaves in the same way. Pisces remind us that some people love and bond through depth. They don't rush to conclusions. They don't easily erase what once touched the heart. And if you're listening to this story now, you may be someone who also carries emotions for a long time. Things that don't yet need a name. Memories that don't need to be labeled as right or wrong. You don't need to understand everything right now. Just allow yourself to feel, and trust that what still holds meaning will find its place within you. The story closes here, not with a final answer, but with an open space so each person can carry what touched them most. And if there is one thing worth keeping after all of this, it's kindness toward your own emotions, because what is felt with depth rarely leaves in a shallow way.